Hello everyone. In this video, I'll be talking about deviated nasal septum. Now, deviated nasal septum is one of the very common causes for nasal obstructions with which patient comes to ENT OPD. Deviated nasal septum can be because of various causes. So it can be because of any trauma. Now, if the trauma is lateral blow, then it will cause the dislocation of the nasal septum from either the floor, that is maxillary crest, or the posterior vomerine junction. If the blow is front blow, then it can lead to the fracture of the nasal bones and as well as nasal septal cartilage and crushing of the septum. During delivery also, in cases of difficult labor, there can be traumatic injury to the nose of the child, and for example in forceps delivery or vacuum delivery. So later on in life it can lead to deviated nasal septum. Then DNS can also be because of some developmental errors. Now the septum develops from the tectoseptal plate, which during development fuses with the palatine bones of both sides. So if there is unequal growth between the palate and the skull base, then there is buckling of the nasal septum and deviation of the septum. Then those patients who continuously or constantly breathe through the mouth, they have the high arched palate, which leads to the deviated nasal septum. Similarly, in patients with cleft lip and cleft palate, the septum is often found to be deviated. Then there are certain racial factors. It is more common. DNS is more commonly seen in Caucasians, and sometimes hereditary factors have also been associated with deviated nasal septum. DNS can be of various types. It can be bony or cartilaginous. We know that the major bones which form the nasal septum are the perpendicular plate of ethmoid and the vomer bone, with minor contributions from the rostrum of sphenoid nasal bones. And the main cartilage is the septal cartilage or the quadrilateral cartilage. So the deviation can be bony or cartilaginous. Similarly, the deviation can involve the anterior part of the septum or the posterior part. The plane of the deviation can be horizontal or vertical, or the deviation can be more marked in the superior part of the septum or in the inferior. Now the common deviations, septal deviations which we come across, they can be divided into 5 types. The first one is anterior dislocation, C-shaped, S-shaped, spur, and thickening. Now here in the first figure we can see the anterior dislocation. Now we can see that the septum as a whole is shifted towards one side of the nasal cavity, and the caudal part of the septum, it has dislocated from the maxillary crest. So that is called anterior dislocation. The second type of deviation we can see here, it is a C-shaped deviation in which the septum is deviated towards one side such that the opposite side becomes roomy, and there is compensatory hypertrophy of the opposite inferior turbinate. The third one is the S-shaped, in which there is bilateral nasal obstruction because septum is deviated like S, that is at two areas or two planes. Then the fourth one is the septal spur. Now, by definition, the spur is a pointed deviation of the nasal septum, which is generally seen at the junction of bone and cartilage. So this is the septal spur. The pointed deviation, it generally impinges on the lateral wall, mostly the inferior turbinate, as can be seen in this figure. The fifth type of septal deviation is the thickening of the nasal septum, in which septum is uh, thickened because of some organized hematoma or the overriding of the fractured parts, so that there is again bilateral nasal obstruction. The clinical features of the septal deviation, the most common clinical feature with which the patient comes to OPD is the nasal obstruction. Now, nasal obstruction, it can be unilateral or bilateral. Now, we have seen that in S-shaped, it can be bilateral. Even in C-shaped, when there is opposite compensatory hypertrophy of the turbinate, then it leads to bilateral septal deviation. Now, if the deviation is high, it causes more obstruction because the air currents, they pass more from the upper part of the nasal cavity. So high deviation can cause more obstruction. Now the sides of the obstruction of the nose can be divided into five parts. First is vestibular, where the vestibule part is stenosed or narrow. It can be because of caudal deviation also, that is anterior dislocation, or because of synechia. So that is called vestibular level. The second one is nasal valve. Now, on what is nasal valve? It is also called Lyman vestibuli. It is the lower part of the upper lateral cartilage, which forms a lining in the nasal cavity, which is called nasal valve. And there is one test, that is Cottle test, in which the cheek is retracted laterally, and if the breathing improves, it suggests that the obstruction is at the level of the nasal valve. The third level of obstruction can be attic. Attic means involving the upper part of the nasal cavity. Fourth level can be terminal, in which there is turbinate hypertrophy, which causes nasal obstruction. And finally, the fifth one is choanal, in which there is choanal atresia, that is posterior nares. Choana are the posterior nares. So if there is any choanal atresia, it can lead to nasal obstruction. Or generally, the unilateral atresia of the choana, it goes unnoticed. However, if there is a bilateral choanal atresia, congenital, then it leads to difficulty in breathing in children, and it requires immediate intervention. Another symptoms of DNS can be headache. Now, headache generally it is seen with spurs, where the spur presses on the lateral wall and it causes neuralgic pain. Then headache can also be a cause of the secondary sinusitis, which is because of the DNS, and it leads to headache. Another symptom can be external deformity. So the dorsum of the nose is deformed, so it is called crooked nose. Then epistaxis can also be a feature of DNS, and especially when there is a spur. So whenever there is a spur, the skin over the spur is stretched, and it leads to recurrent epistaxis. Then hyposmia and anosmia, especially in when the upper part of the septum is deviated, that is high deviation. It can cause hyposmia and anosmia because the upper part of the nasal cavity, that is upper one third, it is lined by the olfactory epithelium. Then there can be secondary middle ear infections because the DNS, it can interfere with the eustachian tube function, and it can lead to the infection ascending into the middle ear. Now, if DNS is not treated for a long time, then there can be some complications. That is because of the constant nasal blockage, such patients they become mouth breathers. Then there can be sleep apnea, in which there is episodes of apnea during sleep for which the patient has to get up. Then recurrent and chronic rhinosinusitis can occur because the ventilation of the sinuses is hampered because of DNS, and it leads to recurrent infection of the sinuses. Similarly, that infection can ascend through the eustachian tube into the middle ear, and it can lead to middle ear infections in chronic DNS patients. Then because in DNS the cavity becomes roomy, so because of the drying effect of the air currents, there is formation of crust, and ultimately it leads to atrophic rhinitis. And in long-standing DNS, the patient can also have asthma. So these are the complications if DNS is not treated early. So to treat a patient of DNS, first we should do examination in the form of anterior rhinoscopy, which can be done in OPD with nasal thydicum speculum. Then nasal endoscopy is a very good investigation, where a 0 degree, generally 0 degree scope is used to visualize the nasal cavity, in which the type of deviation can be noted, and also if there are any secondary sinusitic changes, that also can be seen. Then some radiological investigations in the form of X-ray PNS, that is Waters view and Caldwell's view, can be done, or if required, if we are suspecting any additional pathology, we can go for CT scan PNS. Now the two methods for septal surgery, they can be SMR and septoplasty. SMR is submucous resection of nasal septum. So it is preferred. It is done in adults. However, septoplasty is a preferred method which can be done in children also, but generally it is avoided up till age of 17 years, because up till the age of 17 years there is growth of the facial skeletal bones. So any septal surgery should be avoided before, as far as possible, before 70 years of age. In SMR, the mucopericondium and the mucoperiosteum flaps are raised on both the sides, while in septoplasty, the flaps are raised on one side. In SMR, most of the bony and the cartilaginous septum is removed, except for a small strip of cartilage. It is kept over the dorsal region and in the columnar region. While in septoplasty, only the most deviated part of the septum is removed and most of the septum it is preserved. So it is a more conservative uh, approach. Then in SMR, there are more chances of complications. That is septal hematoma, where there is collection of blood between the mucopericondium flaps on both sides. If it gets infected, it can lead to septal abscess also. Now, septal perforation is also commonly seen with in SMR if both the flaps are incised at the same place. Then, if the dorsal strip of cartilage is not left, it can lead to the saddle nose deformity. Similarly, if the inferior strip of the cartilage is not kept preserved, it leads to columnar retraction. And these all complications, they are less commonly seen with septoplasty. Now, septoplasty can also be done along with rhinoplasty to correct the external deviation of the nose, and that procedure then it is called septorhinoplasty. And septoplasty can also be done along with functional endoscopic sinus surgery, that is FES, if there is also associated sinusitis along with DNS. So septoplasty can be done alone or along with rhinoplasty or along with functional endoscopic sinus surgery.